All right, everybody, we got our next panel ready to go. So excited about this panel. It's finally time that we can stop saying we can't herd the cats. We're gonna get organized, and I wanna thank Jared Kylo for leading this discussion today. Audience, if you have any questions, please don't ask it in the chat because we probably won't see it. Put it in the Q&A and we'll try and get to your questions. Take it away, Jared. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're having this panel mostly so that we can look across the state and see who's kind of leading, not only locally, but you know, through politics and through regulations. So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of all see each other, communicate to the public and say what we're doing and how we're taking care of our membership. And also, what should we be doing with the people who are not members of a trade organization? I think we've taken on a lot of responsibility as trade organizations to really kind of push the envelope about lower taxations, lower regulations, at least something that's a little bit more, you know, in tune with regular businesses. So we're going to have an opportunity to go through a lot of leaders in trade organizations for cannabis and talk about what some of their individual successes are. The people who were picked today have, you know, all unique skills, and how those unique skills all gave them a position to kind of bring their trade organizations to the limelight and what successes they have. And since they all have a fairly different, you know, skill set, it's really interesting to see how each one of them has been successful and how they've navigated their kind of comparative advantage to others. So let's kind of go down a little bit of a list here and just say hello. Dalian Young, do you want to kind of start off? I mean, he comes from San Diego and is part of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. Dalian, I'll just kind of give you a quick little question, and then you kind of introduce yourself as part of that. In our kind of conversations, your background in political campaigns is pretty much extraordinary. So I'm super excited to have someone who's got that kind of history in politics and how to organize political campaigns. You know, tell us about yourself, your organization, and how, you know, how that experience in political campaigns has really kind of given you this kind of space to be able to navigate, you know, local governments.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jared. I really appreciate you inviting me and for being here. And thank you, Susan, for putting this on. This is awesome. So yeah, my background is actually in political campaigns. I've been working on campaigns since 2012. Started on just like a local city council campaign, and then unfortunately we lost that one in the primary by 52 votes. Know the pain of losing close elections. And then after that, did a bunch of elections all throughout the state. I did a big congressional campaign in 2014 and essentially wanted out of all of politics. Saw the writing on the wall with cannabis legalization in 2016 and wanted to get involved and see what I could do to help out the cause. And so got involved with a local trade association down here in 2015. And then in 2016, we actually passed 2 ordinances in San Diego County in 2 different jurisdictions there, as well as we worked on a few different city council campaigns as well at the time. And one of the caveats for working on those campaigns for me was that those folks, or the candidates, had to be pro-cannabis, and they had to support legislation when it came about. So just from that background and the work we did at the trade association level as well, we've been able to really get a lot of candidates on board with the issue. And then also when we're doing lobbying and working on regulations in various jurisdictions, those conversations are much easier to have because we have those past relationships. So, you know, I'm proud to say the first adult use sale in the entire state took place in San Diego. And then right now we have about 7, almost 8 of our 18 cities in the county have either medical or adult use sales at the moment. So yeah, really excited about the opportunity coming up this year in the elections in 2020. And then I guess, you know, as we go about this, we could talk about some of the different things that we're doing to continue promoting those candidates.
Nice. I want it to be really kind of an open forum. I mean, we're all professionals in our own right. So I realize you have a little mute button and unmute button. So everyone on this panel, if there's questions you'd like to kind of jump in, like, please, this isn't like just this is about us coming together and communicating with each other. So if there's a question about some other panelists, please feel open and free to speak freely. I think everyone on this who's watching would like to see us and how we communicate, because I think we are going to be kind of a hub of a group of trade organizations is really going to push the envelope for regulations in our local and state kind of jurisdictions. So Dalian, thank you for that. I know we'll have a lot more time to kind of talk and get a little bit more individualized on your stuff, but I think I'll go through and organize the panel and get them up to date. Jocelyn Kane, let's have you up next, the Coachella Valley Cannabis Alliance Network. Have a little bit of introduction, but one of the things I want you to kind of say after your introduction is, we're seeing cannabis lounges come right to Coachella Valley, and it's like what city doesn't want to have more cannabis lounges? But from my understanding, there's only like 12 or 13 in the whole state, and it seems like it's an underrepresented part of the industry. I'd really like you to kind of tell me, like, where are you with this? How did you get these politicians to do this, and give us some secret sauce of how we go about doing that in our own city. So thank you for coming on, Jocelyn.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Susan. All right, do that toke away. We're super glad to be here. As an organization, we've been around, I think 4 years now, and we're super lucky, I think, that the Coachella Valley cities, at least 5 of the 9 of them, have embraced cannabis, commercial cannabis, in almost all of the supply chain, and including, like you said, that social use in terms of cannabis lounges. There's 2 cities that allow them now, and there's many coming online in Palm Springs and in Cathedral City. Unfortunately, due to COVID, they're closed. They're looked at, right, like more like bars, and so they were not essential, but they are always attached to a retail. So they're, the retail part is operating in the way that they're allowed to. We are a cannabis organization that's geographic as opposed to picking a lane. So UCBA, right, is retailers, and growers associations obviously are what they are. We are all of the different parts of the supply chain, as well as affiliated businesses that support those plant touching businesses. And we're still growing, which is great. And again, this is a very progressive part of California. And in large part, I think that the lounge uses are coming because these cities understand that we run on tourism. And cannabis tourism is a legitimate sort of part of that local economy, and hopefully will be more as we go forward. And so as far as sort of being able to get over, the hurdles of how does this work, and, where are all the 1.5 million people that come to this valley to visit going to use this cannabis, we have to provide something that's safe and managed and organized. And so as we work towards getting the other 4 cities in the valley, again, we only have 5 out of 9 right now that allow this activity. We're going to keep normalizing. We were also able and super lucky to get the Hall of Flowers to come. So as far as cannabis events, I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the valley. And we have space, which is great, right? We have outdoor space. So because, again, of COVID, I think we might benefit in some way, certainly in the event area, because we have a lot of room for people to come and do things, albeit it's a little hot right now, but it's not always this hot.
What was kind of one of the bigger hurdles when trying to convince, politicians and even the public to allow smoking lounges? It tends to be somewhat of a difficult conversation. I know LA's been talking about it for 11 years and we've done nothing. So, when I think about it, like, we'd really like to hear some advice, and that's kind of why we're on this panel, is to kind of inform each other about what did we do to really kind of jump over what are big hurdles. And I know that geographically we all have our own individual ones, but I would like to hear, like, was it taxes? Was it tourism? Was it just the fact that it was trying to be normalized? Or what do you think was really kind of the tipping point for politicians there?
Well, we had really, and I can't take a whole lot of credit, in Palm Springs, we had some very progressive council members who are no longer on council, or one of them is, who were very instrumental in suggesting that normalizing this, use of cannabis in the valley was really important, and didn't want to treat cannabis differently than other retail, right? So the only real hurdles, at least initially, obviously, are law enforcement discussing this idea of getting high and then driving back to where you come from. And so that's a conversation, right, that we all have had many times in terms of, what are those risks, and are they greater than other risks with bars that are located right next to cannabis retail in commercial corridors. Also, I think a lot of the conversation moved forward fairly quickly because there are quite a few people here who need cannabis as medicine, cannot use that cannabis in their own homes. They might live in an assisted living facility because we have a lot of older folks in the valley. They might be in an apartment, complex where they just can't use it. And it's their medicine, and they have to have a place to use it. So that really kind of moves the ball forward in large part, because it isn't just a recreational situation. For many people, it's the only place they can, use their medicine, and it's really important. And if it's around getting a sober ride home, or are you too impaired, right? Those are just small fixes that we can find our answers to. There's Uber and Lyft all over the valley. You don't have to drive home. So the other thing is obviously supporting economically retail stores with additional activity and opportunities. And so we use the opportunity in many cases to say that there are lots of things we want to do in social things, yoga, music performances, poetry readings, whatever it is socially, we want to do these things and include cannabis in that activity. And if you can't, go to your your local and do trivia night because you don't drink alcohol, why can't we have those spaces similarly? Again, it was this sort of comparison. And so we were Palm Springs was first. Cathedral City has come in next, and we really do expect Desert Hot Springs, although for some reason they're super progressive on all other aspects, so they've been struggling a little bit on this social use. I think we're going to see sort of it mixed with the idea of hotels and also grow facilities, doing tasting rooms. So they keep mixing these uses up, they can't get the lounge use separated necessarily from that sort of tasting room use. As we can separate that in a legislation, I think we can move the ball.
Did you have to offer a specific tax increase just for consumption, or an added tax, or is it really just all about the retail, and once it's sold, consumption is just, very nice. I mean, that's a tough one, because I know that almost everywhere else they're saying, give me an incentive to let you smoke in public. And so that's been the constant kind of narrative I think we always run into. So
why is it considered public?
Well, I mean, when you're now in a public place where multiple people can all smoke legally, that does become now a public kind of display. Now, how do you keep the smoke from, being a part of the employees? When we're talking about OSHA certifications and stuff, and keeping those kind of what might be considered harmful smoke, there's a lot of kind of insurance that comes with it. And with that, a lot of cities want to go, give me my tax incentive to allow this, or put my political hot potato, which might be what's happening in Desert Hot Springs, which is, how do I sell this to the public and not disenfranchise them from me politically? So we find a lot of that too. So thank you. If you want to kind of talk on that, please do. Otherwise, we'll definitely come back to it.
Yeah, I
because
feel like
consumption lounges is big.
Let everybody have a say first before I dominate the conversation.
We got a whole hour, and so and as soon as I let Mela Hat on, she's gonna dominate, because man, what a woman that is. So I'm gonna move right to Mela Hat right now. Thank you, Jocelyn. We'll continue. Mela Hat, you are a woman after my own heart. I appreciate the work and advocacy you do. You are a political beast. I mean, it seems like you've been a Democratic delegate your entire life. So I just I'd really like to kind of hear, like, not only how do you organize family life, political life, advocacy life, and then kind of business development? Because it seems like, you take all of those on in a very, like, I guess, dominating way. And I say that in a way because when you walk into a room, marijuana Mela hat dominates a room. And so I want to see, like, how has that really been to your benefit, and how's it been to the benefit of SACA?
Well, thank you so much. It's very kind. Jared is on my payroll, everybody. That's why he says all these wonderful things about me. I do have a political background. I'm actually one of the evil superdelegates that some of people hate in politics. I'm a DNC member, elected to represent California along with 19 other people. And, cannabis should not be a partisan thing. It's actually allowed me to work with a lot of smart-minded Republicans in the county to move this along. But the political connections, as Dalen said, look, it's almost like that's the backbone of anything you want to get done, whatever the industry is. And I'm so glad and grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, including me, because if we don't get politically organized, we can't move forward on anything, whether it's taxation, consumption lounges, whatever we want to move on. Orange County is behind a lot of the other counties. We've got 1 out of 34 cities that has retail sales in the county. Costa Mesa, some cities have a non-retail sale ordinances out there. Jared, you were in the Orange County Register talking about how Anaheim is coming online soon, and I've been working on that since last summer. So bringing these people together, making sure we have what we need is critical, and the relationships with labor is critical. Going into a room as Malahat is awesome, but going into the room as Malahat and UFCW and this group and that group brings so much more to our industry, legitimacy and also a voice. I'm a glass half full kind of person. My family life is, I'm a refugee. I came to this country when I was 5 years old, and we've built everything we have. My brother and I, my brother's the president of WeCan. We own the 4th licensed dispensary in Orange County, and then sold it and started helping others get licensing. I see this COVID crisis as an opportunity for the industry to really be able to move. There are going to be, every municipality across the state is going to be facing huge budget cuts. So we have an opportunity to partner with public safety and other parts of the city that need the revenue to help them understand what a great industry this can be for them, what great jobs we're producing, and what we're looking forward to doing for that municipality and the county. Our county government's a little bit, what's the diplomatic word to use here in Orange County?
Slow?
A little slow to kind of figure out what needs to happen, but that's changing. The demographics in the county are changing. The clientele for cannabis is changing, where we're regulating it, because regardless of regulation, there's cannabis in Orange County. And in order to make sure you're getting a safe product, you're getting revenues for your city, you've got to move those legislators forward on making sure we do that. So my approach is, look, I believe I'm on the right side of history here. We're fighting for good policy. We're fighting for consumer protection. We're fighting for the future of this industry. And so it feels good going and fighting for this. And every day I see elected officials moving forward on this. Those who are stuck in the past are going to be left in the past.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Anaheim. It kind of looked like there were some dominoes that started to fall when you talk about city council members who are finally becoming, I guess, a little bit more personally kind of interacting with cannabis, and what in their personal life they finally saw that there was some space. Do you want to kind of maybe talk about some of those?
In the article I mentioned, Lucille Crane, who's a member of the council, a long-time member of the council, very well-known Republican member of the council. I gave her a tour of some of our shops in Orange County last summer, and it blows their mind when they see how this is set up, where it's not something that they had imagined from television or something somebody told them. And it is that one-on-one connection. I think all of us on this Zoom call, by the way, I'm so happy to see the gender balance here. Thank you so much for making sure there's gender balance on these calls. But all of us are the ones that are leading the charge in normalizing this. I've got a kid, I'm a business owner, I'm a successful mom, I'm a badass DNC member, and I smoke weed. And I do it all while I'm handling it. So normalizing that is really important. I think, and I don't do it necessarily just because I need it medicinally. Like Jocelyn said, I haven't drank alcohol in years. It gives me an upset stomach. So I would much rather play trivia or bingo or whatever it is doing this. So all of us are normalizing it, and I'm so grateful to be in this fight with you.
Did you need to bring a lot of the public to these hearings? Was it a public push? Because, when we look at where advocacy was for the last few decades, It was picket signs and people who were, who were severely ill, who were coming to these meetings and really kind of pushing the envelope and making sure people were recognized as the problems they had as individuals and how cannabis was helpful. Is that still the way that we kind of move the needle?
That was not the approach I took in Anaheim. The approach I took in Anaheim was more, look, you have to see who your audience is. And my audience is moderate Republicans who are business owners who want to see good business in their city. So that's where I appealed to them. I took them to the businesses. I made them see what their city could have. We did polling, we did focus groups. We spent a lot of money and time getting this right. But really, this is the sausage factory. This is behind the scenes, talking to council, talking to stakeholders in the city, all kinds of stakeholders from to others of what is going to be acceptable, what we can do, and brought a package together that is going to get the votes, hopefully, that we need to get it passed.
Well, Melahat, I think what I appreciate about you is your forethought, and you're kind of, you're definitely not a reactionary person. Being very proactive and seeing that you have this Republican side that you're going to have to appeal from a business side, it doesn't necessarily appeal with the picket signs. And
Yeah.
so, and as leaders of trade organizations, we really have to appeal to the audience of which we're trying to, kind of appeal to us too. So I think that give and take is where I really appreciate that. So thank you for bringing that kind of perspective, because I think as we go through this panel, you're going to see that everyone had a different way of going about their local government, and just you explaining that is a good kind of segue over to Tara Carver. Tara, another badass in cannabis. So structured and so organized, and very much an advocate from the ground up. You fight for your people in such a way that is widely accepted. I think sometimes when powerful people come off as maybe overwhelming, you tend to fit in wherever you are. And I think that being a chameleon as a leader is not easy in this space. So please, I'd like you not only tell us about what's going on in Humboldt County Growers Alliance, but also, you have an abatement program that is, I can not even say, like, it's the most successful abatement program for illegal operators that I've ever seen. And I think I'd really like you to kind of focus some of on that, because you're also dealing with maybe a more liberal kind of city council. And so what is kind of the messaging you give them, and kind of in contrast to what maybe Melahat was talking about?
Sure. Awesome. Thank you, Susan and Jared, for inviting myself and the Alliance to this panel. I really appreciate the company. I'm inspired just listening to so far. You're like comparing notes and listening to our journeys as we've gone through this. So I'm the executive director of the Humboldt County Growers Alliance. We have 350 cannabis businesses as dues paying members. 250 are plant touching and licensed, and about 180 are actually farmers or cultivators. Arguably, Humboldt County has the longest standing history with cannabis, ranging over 60 plus years. Many of our members are multi-generational. And Humboldt came out very, very strong in passing the first land use ordinance in the state of California back when MMRSA is what we were all discussing. That set, I think, a tone to how I personally move forward with advocacy. Coming from the industry myself, transitioning from an activist to an advocate is a really major line, in my opinion. And I think, and thank you for calling me a chameleon, I think the strategy behind being a chameleon is asking questions wherever you go, and not assuming or asserting yourself that you would know anything or everything about work being done in other places. So I think that-that's what has helped me as a leader. To Humboldt County, and the abatement program, back to our historical history with so many years of, and decades, honestly, of cultivation. The good, the bad, and the ugly came from that. Arguably, the good is the stories that come out of our hills, the genetics that we continue to grow, and the passion and honor to this plant that all of us are here to discuss today. With that being said, with no rules, people don't follow them. And so there's been a long history of what I would call environmental abuse brought to Humboldt County in various forms with the production of cannabis while it was unregulated. And I really do truly blame that on prohibition, and not necessarily on the people who were growing cannabis and in this violation space per se. And so having an unregulated industry for so many decades brought a lot of trouble and conflict when it comes to environmental issues. We also have an extraordinarily strong environmental community. They have tackled and taken down big timber in the past. Ironically enough, most of them were also cannabis farmers themselves. And so the two, activism and cannabis farming, have really produced a strong environmental voice in our county. And that's really been the push behind, I think, coming out with the first land use ordinance, was to clean up some of that mess that had been caused, but also then it resulted in the abatement program that Humboldt County has had for the last couple of years, that many other counties are now looking at and picking up. And what the abatement program does is it created a mechanism for code enforcement to essentially send a letter to folks who had not signed up with the process. And in that letter, there was a lot of strong teeth, including fines up to $10,000 a day per violation if you did not respond to that letter within 10 days. I can honestly say that the effort of the abatement program has been a stronger and arguably more productive effort than in 2 years, than 40 plus years of helicopters in camp. It's been a very difficult conversation within our community. Just because you got an abatement letter doesn't necessarily mean you were a bad actor. In fact, quite the opposite. A lot of the problems and issues that the community has had with the abatement program is that the barriers to entry to become a licensed cannabis business are so high that it left a lot of people out. And the abatement program is pushing them essentially off a cliff where they can't sign up. There's a lot of local issues to that pull back and forth struggle. But that being said, the reduction in military style law enforcement raids is bringing, I think, and this is my personal opinion, a lot of healing to a community that has been traumatized by it in the past. And there's a lot more humanity in a civil enforcement than military style enforcement. And when you get a letter in the mailbox, that doesn't mean that you're running and hiding your children in the woods, which has historically been what's happened up here. So difficult conversation, a conversation that needs to happen. And I appreciate you bringing it up today. And appreciate you.
Thank you for taking enforcement to a place that takes guns, badges, SWAT teams, and helicopters kind of like out of the equation, because there's a lot of PTSD that comes along with that too. And I think as people try to adapt, if you're being pushed into a place of adapting to a new legal market versus being guided, I think those are two completely different ways of ushering people into the legal market. And I think, the kind of softer hand, or at least kind of like, at least in a letter, gives you an opportunity to stress out about the letter, not instantly be handcuffed and put in jail and have your children watch you be carted off. I think thank you for adding humanity to enforcement, because I think too many times the legal industry is like, all we have to do is enforce and everything will be fine. No. But the reality is there's humans that are on the other end of that. And we're all trying to find, how do we adapt into a place where we're respected and we can stop looking over our shoulder for someone to come after us. So hopefully we find lower barriers to entry for all farmers to make it into this market. And I think with your leadership, I think we're getting closer and closer to that. So really appreciate you, Tara. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more, but I'm going to move on to Adam. Adam, LBCA, I'll tell you, man, the resilience that Long Beach has had inside the cannabis industry is renowned. And the fact that you've gone through, 6 years of not being able to operate inside Long Beach, coming back super strong and organized as an organization and as a community is something that we can all look up to. So I'd really like you not only discuss kind of the length that it's taken LBCA to really come back and really be a part of the community now back in Long Beach with open retail shops, but also, man, you just lowered local taxes. I mean, we all want to know what the secret sauce is for going on and talking to legislators and regulators and getting some lower taxes. So please, if you can expand upon that, I think we're all ears.
Yeah, thanks, Jared, for that. And I want to just quickly thank Susan for having this great platform so we can be able to exchange all these great conversations. And, the LBCA sticking together, I guess, over the years has been very tricky. As you know, the cannabis industry, there's so many individuals trying to figure it out, especially, we're talking about 2010, 11, 12, 13, where a lot of these developed programs and state information and infrastructure wasn't even present at the time. So it was definitely hard, but I definitely give that to the awesome people that we work with. I mean, the board of directors, Greg, John, and that would be doing a lot of people injustice of the great members that we have that really have kind of stuck with us throughout different various time. This is over six years, 2 ballot initiatives. We garnished over 100,000 signatures, over 4 years, 3 years, task force commissions in the city to be able to really get the information out there. And it wasn't really easy. And I think the most important thing that really got us there was, besides building good relationships with great organizations, labor, we work really close with United Food and Commercial Workers, also industry folks and industry partners, building those relationships and then being able to go educate. Of course, you got to be able to educate, with the city, but the community at large was extremely important. As many other communities, Long Beach is a very tightly knit community. One thing very distinct and unique about Long Beach is we're all tied together, and there's so many opportunities to get out there and reach people. And that wasn't happening. It was a lot of the perceptions, that the stigmas, and really getting out there and changing that, one neighborhood community organization at a time, one city leader at a time. And then really where the big impact came is when we were able to, go out and reach the voters and bring and show how much support was garnished through the voters to these elected officials and beyond. So it was really a lot of advocacy, and great people that kept on pushing, knowing that we were going to be on the right side of history. We knew what we were doing was right. And, we knew some of the things that were happening on the ground were wrong. And, it was just a natural thing to do. And luckily, the organization, stuck together throughout these years. And, truly we were an organization in crisis for so long, being closed down while, other cities, other municipalities weren't. And on top of that, so many more were just straight up banned, and kind of leading, talking about the taxes. And I really, for all trade organizations and individuals or cities that are coming online that will have trade organizations, it's the ground game that's important. Through those years and through the sitting and talking to so many different folks, we were able to establish credibility, not by saying we know all the answers or we have all the right thing, is by sharing the knowledge, sharing the information, and saying when we don't have all the answers, but let us get back to you so we can explain it and go do some research. And I think throughout the years and, spending that time, we've developed this open communication, and, we bring up things when they're relevant. So then, fast forwarding to, late last year, mid last year, the Long Beach Collective Association consists of all of the legal, operators in the city of Long Beach that have joined. And that consists of retailers, distributors, manufacturers, cultivators, so the whole entire spectrum. And pretty much in Long Beach, all type licenses are allowed except for outdoor cultivation, just because of our zoning and land use doesn't really promote that here in the city. And, and we were recognizing that our manufacturers, distributors, and lab testers are pretty much dying on the vine. When this tax ordinance came into place, it was in 2016. We were actually on the negotiating table for those taxes in regards to the retail, but a very wide stroke, because nobody really understood distribution manufacturing at the time, because it wasn't even really a license that was available for so long. Generally it's always been really retail and then cultivation, in the past, that were licenses that were really being discussed versus other type licenses. And I can even go back to 2010 when Prop 19 in Long Beach was being voted on. The city put up a substantive tax initiative that would have taxed 25% for retailers, which was pretty much a sin tax. So the idea of taxing wasn't really, it was done so wrong, because of the stigma and the perception. If we're going to deal with it, let's just tax it. And, kind of, knowing that kind of mentality and the issues that we were dealing with, we knew we had a lot of work to do to kind of change that. And, you know, also a very important thing that, you know, there's a lot of jobs in the cannabis industry that's set to be made. And these operators, manufacturers, distributors, lab testers, cultivators, they want to be able to hire more. They want to be able to produce more. They want more sales teams. But the reality is they're not going to be able to achieve that if they're going to be paying a tax rate, which is 6%, for example, for a distributor. If you're paying 6% on a distribution on your gross sales, that's, you know, it's really eliminating, you know, all viability of your business in the long run. So, you know, thankfully through the pipelines that we've been able to, you know, carve out and work with the city as a partner and various people, you know, we brought in some of our, you know, great financial minds. You know, these companies have great CFOs, have a lot of great background, did analysis to explain what that means financially. And then also what we were able to do is, you know, present that. And luckily the city council and the people that were around, you know, started to understand, because the reality is I think it was around 75% of all the taxes that are coming into the city right now are coming from retail facilities. And then the rest, we have like 325 applicants in the city. And out of the actual tax producing ones, it's like not even, you know, 10 or 12 operators that are actually moving forward, and everybody else was stuck in construction. So, you know, we needed to widen the tax base, modernize the tax rates, and really be able to convince the city that now we're going to be able to bring in more money into the city because we're making these operators more competitive in the market. One, two, a very big selling point as well. Let's create jobs. You know, let's stop, you know, these cannabis jobs are good paying jobs. They're great jobs with careers that will really lead into hundreds, if not thousands of jobs once this program is fully implemented. And I know that, you know, those are things that we never want to, you know, turn an eye to. And, you know, and just one last thing, and I'll let it go for now is, you know, I saw a question from Ryan, and another awesome thing with taxes is, it was, what is the status on law regarding laws regarding academic cannabis programs? And I just very excited to just announce that we recently, as the LBCA, signed a contract with the Long Beach Community College that we're doing a non-credited training program for all type licenses. And it's going to be a 101. And hopefully based on the success of this year, people signing up and making sure that they're getting into jobs, you know, actually look into accredited classes and maybe even, you know, work towards some Cal States. And I think, you know, I credit all of that really again to the industry working together, being able to put aside certain issues that, you know, come up and really having, you know, one voice as much as possible, you know, is really what's, you know, helped everybody, you know, get to where we're at.
Yeah, let me ask one more question, because we talk about, you know, what information city council might need to talk about tax reduction. Did you do like an economic study and show what it would look like if we lowered prices and what the velocity of sales might go up? I'm just trying to get I kind of want everyone here to kind of go, what should I be focusing on? You know, economic studies can range from $15,000 to $60,000, and you have to pull in a lot of resources and information and trying to get your members to give them their kind of personal financial data so we really can discuss it. What do you think was like kind of I don't want to say the silver bullet, but I mean, what do you think was kind of like the tipping point for them to go, wow, I see this economic study. I see that if I lower prices, I can increase total revenue. If I lower the tax rate, what was kind of the things that you worked on?
Well, I think you know, sometimes, you know, depending on the situation, we kind of like to work in reverse engineer the problem so we can explain it well. And I think what we started was we identified all of the applicants in the city. We identified who was tax producing and who's not tax producing. And then what we developed was also how far along are people in construction, right? Because that would speak to the willingness of companies to come invest into the city under such a tax rate. You know, when we first opened up these license applications, different license applications, we had a flood of individuals. And I think people were more focusing, this is 2017 that I'm talking about here. So people were focusing on, let's get this license, let's get it going, and we're gonna cross every single bridge when we get there. you know, some bridges you can cross, some bridges you can't. And though that was a tax, right? There's nothing to cross there. It's either you change it, fix it, or you live with it, or you move out of the city. Very simple. There's only 3 options. So we went and we really looked at what's on the ground, what's producing taxes, where businesses are at, and then be able to, an important component, to explain to them the progress of the city's program, our program that we developed together. And then identifying, why those were happening. And then really, that's when we start to kind of work with our members, CFOs. And I got to give it up to the members, because the members are the ones that said, hey, I will give this information to the city. I will give this information to our members to understand. I will dedicate my CFO's time. I will dedicate my attorney's time, working with, labor and some of the, experts that we can pull from there as well, to be able to, bring this conversation into light. I think, we relied on the resources that we had in our membership to be able to offset some of the more expensive, you're right. I mean, I can get an economic study. It can be extremely expensive. It could be long. It can be drawn out, and I think we started within to find the assets that we have that we could use. And then we really go out to find what's missing. And luckily, we have a lot of great talent and minds in our membership. And between identifying the lacks and the lack of what's happening in the city's tax program, and development in businesses actually getting business licenses, and jobs was a big part, Jared. Jobs, people's jobs. This is something that, especially here in the city, and I know so many other cities, always finding great ways to bring jobs. I think there was a report that could estimate almost, in the thousands, couple of thousand jobs. I mean, we celebrate when we see a company like a space tech company or some other, cool company that comes to town and brings 40, 50 jobs. We're excited, as you see headlines and all this great. And we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands. So, that was very underrated of what the future jobs that needed to be captured. And I think that was a big part of the conversation.
Thanks, Adam. I think what's really important is leaders in our organizations, that our membership trusts us to do the right thing with their information. And I think, it just goes to show your leadership that people were willing to give you very personalized, financial information to really kind of strengthen the argument. So I really commend you on organizing people and getting your members to really jump in, because I think that's one of the most important things about this group that we're going to continue to talk about, is what our membership does. And I thank you, Adam. I'm going to move on to Johnny. Johnny, man, I mean, you are organizing a group of retailers in San Francisco that are some of the juggernauts in the state. They have consumption lounges, and I mean, and also, part of what San Francisco seems to continue to do well, which is kind of combat the illicit market. I mean, for years, it's just been San Francisco has come together as a community to support the legal operators. So tell us not only about your organization and what you've done, but also let's talk about a couple of things when it comes to combating the illicit market. And I definitely want you to kind of poke a little bit in at the social equity program, because mostly what a lot of cities are doing, the growth of their cannabis sector is all predicated on a lot of social equity applicants. And just kind of want to get your opinion on how San Francisco has done to keep it fair, keep it, and keep it broad across a spectrum of people in need, because it's really hard to say, just one minority group or one group is more deserving than the other. So would like to kind of maybe kind of look at all those little options of what's happened in San Francisco. So thanks for joining us, Johnny.
Thanks, Jared and Susan, for pulling us together. It's great to see all the leaders, and organizing the orgs is critical, especially now that we kind of have this flashpoint of COVID and being declared essential. Like we have an opportunity to really move our industry forward. Johnny Delaplane, I'm president of the San Francisco Cannabis Retailers Alliance. We represent storefront retailers here in San Francisco. And now that means there's a lot of social equity dispensaries as well. This organization formed when San Francisco was making the transition from medical cannabis dispensaries, which have been around in San Francisco for well over a decade, to adult use. And kind of that transition is the glue that brought a lot of the big operators together with all the existing applicants and social equity applicants. And so through the process that was occurring in 2016, 2017, you know, the organization was formed and birthed, and it's a volunteer organization, and we're hyper focused on San Francisco. You know, going towards, you know, the illicit market, and why are there, you know, illicit dispensaries in LA and not as many in San Francisco? I don't really have a great answer for that, other than the fact that we have had regulated medical cannabis dispensaries, and the medical cannabis movement, you know, began in San Francisco. And so people are very conscious about going to buy tested products. And it might also be a real estate thing. It's just a lot tighter here. It's a lot easier to see who's the bad actors here than it is possibly in LA. And so, you know, as far as the illicit market, I mean, I'm wholeheartedly towards lowering taxes over enforcement, right? The only way we're really going to, you know, bring everybody into the fold is by getting the prices of products down to the point where the consumer can make a choice, right? Can I go into a regular, you know, tested legal dispensary, or should I go buy it from, you know, some guy who's been growing it for years and years, right? Like those are the decisions that people have to make. And without lowering taxes at the state and local level, we're never really going to get there. And then a little bit about social equity. So we have currently 4 social equity dispensaries open in San Francisco. Took about 2 years from the implementation of the policy to get the first store open. I'm lucky enough to be a partner on the first social equity dispensary open in San Francisco. And shout out to my partner, Sean Richard, Burners on Hate. So proud of him for going through all that. And social equity in San Francisco, you know, there's 6 criteria. And so a lot of it is focused locally, and those criteria vary from city to city, and what, you know, Oakland considers social equity versus what San Francisco considers it versus what LA considers it are all slightly different, and generally focused towards allowing ownership for people that have been either born or raised in that city or local. And so that goes, you know, so with social equity, you need strong partnerships, and you need partnerships because a lot of these social equity applicants, they don't have the experience to bring something like this through a 2-year process, not to mention the cost of holding real estate and all of that. So I hope I answered your questions there, Jared, but feel free to poke me if you want me to go one direction or the other.
Well, you know, I look at San Francisco just being 7 miles by 7 miles, and it really is kind of like all the businesses are vertical inside there. So you do look at a smaller footprint when we're trying to combat the illicit industry. Plus, there's only like 4 ways out of San Francisco, so trying to rob a place and trying to operate illegally is not as easy. But plus, the police and even Gavin Newsom back in the day, when he really gave us space to speak at like the marijuana council. I mean, I think there were some early adoptions that were there that kind of brought everyone into not only advocacy role, but also into the role of being self-policing, and that, you know, you don't necessarily go to the illegal operators because we're trying to support taxpayers and support the tested product. So in a lot of ways, San Francisco is unique because of how small its footprint is, but also how close the community is. So to your point, I mean, it really did take on the medical marijuana community to really kind of hold tight, you know, testing and those kind of standards. So, you know, the social equity programs are having difficulty all throughout the state. So, you know, anytime we can look at something that's successful, and as you talk about some of the successes you've had, I mean, I'm still waiting for our social equity program here in Los Angeles. You know, we've got 100 new licensees that are just coming on board. They've waited their 2+ years as well. So we're also trying to go, how do we allow these new entrances into the market to not come in as distressed assets day one when taxes are high, fees are high, and 2 years of paying, you know, a lease on a property so that you can continue to maybe get an application in and get a license is a huge barrier to entry. So I applaud San Francisco for taking a lot of the leadership on that. I know the Bay Area has definitely been one to kind of say, we definitely have to do something about the war on drugs and give back to the communities that were most harmed by it. So thank you for taking some of that leadership, and congratulations on Haight Street. I think it's a great place for one of the first social equity applicant businesses to operate. I think that's a great international place to be. So thank you for that. I appreciate it, Johnny. I'm sure we'll get to a couple more questions. Nate Bradley. man, like a juggernaut when it comes to organizing, bringing membership, getting really good organizations together. Happy to see you now taking on kind of the consumer protection side of things. The executive director of the Cannabis Consumer Policy Council. Some of the questions I have for you is, you know, after these decades of advocacy, cannabis has definitely become more mainstream and more accepted. But when we look at what's happened, do consumers need more protection now than they ever have? Or what does consumer protection look like now that we've got, you know, certificates of analysis and regulations and track and trace? So what is the new consumer protection look like nowadays?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Jared, for having me on here. And I'd like to, right now, the biggest issues are, for the last 30 years or so, almost 40 years, we have been in what I like to call the pre-legalization era. And now that Prop 64 has passed, things have changed. We're now in the post-legalization era. And we went from a consumer group that the government tried to arrest to a consumer group that it was the government's job to protect. And so now, instead of just trying to stand outside the Capitol, hold signs, try and get some time with people, the government needs to hear from us at all levels of government, from protecting us at our jobs, to protecting us from losing our kids, to getting kicked out of our houses. And one of the things I saw in the 7 years I was leading I was working on the behalf of the cannabis industry, was there was a huge lack of a voice for consumers while that was all going on. I'd be in these meetings day in and day out, and there was literally a need for a consumer voice that at every place that I was speaking at. And you've got groups like Normal that do a lot of great work, groups like Americans for Safe Access as well. But I didn't see during that time them in every meeting, and there was really only the industry speaking and labor speaking. So we're at a place now where the government's ready to make a lot of changes to help us, but they need to hear from us at all levels of government.
Well, and now we're looking at, the industry can't just speak up for itself. We need to start drawing in more kind of the normalized trade organizations that have been inside California for a while. So, let's start, engaging with the retail trade organizations that represent other businesses outside of cannabis. What's been kind of your role in trying to entice other organizations and other industries to start battling for what now is a legal business who's tax paying? What is kind of your draw to bring kind of those other organizations into the fold?
Well, one of the reasons I started this org was I wanted to create basically a hub where industry and labor and other groups can all work at the same and in the same rooms, and they need to be having the exact same talks so that consumers can go out and work on the issues that the industry is working on and that labor is working on, but from the consumer point of view, because that's one of the most needed angles right now. I think as a whole, one of the main things we're trying to do right now is to let legislators know, let the regulators know that consumers need more access. Tax relief isn't just for the industry as a whole, but consumers, we pay for that tax, and tax relief helps us. Local access helps us. And our role is bringing that voice and bringing those issues to all aspects, but I think one of the biggest ones is kind of like I was saying at the start, which is getting groups like labor and industry on the exact same page, because the reality is there for years we've looked at groups like labor, and industries looked at as labor as like they are the bad guys. And I think consumers can look at it from both angles, so we can be that hub in the middle, which can help bring both sides in.
Nice. Well, thank you, Nate, and congratulations on your new organization. I'm really much supportive of, because the discussions now with legislators are how do we protect our consumers, and the reason why all of us are on this panel is because as we went through this, and I realized maybe it was a little more tedious to talk about everyone's individualized specialties, but that's what really makes each one of us important to an overall voice. No one has the specialty to be able to say, I can take on the whole industry, because we can't. We don't know all the personal kind of interactions we need to have, the politics that's in local government, how do they interact? And so what's been great right now is having all these trade organizations here telling you where their successes were. Now what we do is we share those successes amongst organizations so that we really can push the envelope forward. Jocelyn, your space in telling us how to move forward with consumption lounges is so important for every one of these trade organizations to increase their reach. Tara, your information on abatement and lowering, kind of the violence that goes along with enforcement is so important, and we need to learn more of that. Adam, you telling us about how to lower taxes and what it really took inside of your organization is why we need to share this information. Because if each one of us inside of our own organizations doesn't communicate with the other, then we're missing out on the experience and someone who took on a big policy change and was successful. And there's no reason to recreate the wheel every time. As we share that, we can have these, incremental gains and success stories inside of California. And the goal really here is, how do we communicate together? I know that UCBA is sent out pretty much like, an invitation to almost every retailer in the state to communicate on Telegram so that we can have really close communication so that all voices can be heard. Because it's really difficult as leaders of this organization to not only hear everyone, but act in everyone's best interest, which is difficult. So you have to take the majority. You can't please everyone all the time. And the goal here of this kinds of group in our organizations is to make sure that other people in this industry see how valuable trade organizations are for getting our message out to local and state governments so that we really can have a more normalized industry, and so we can not just be sustainable, but we can actually have the thriving industry that's necessary. We look at the amount of pent-up demand that California has, with over 70% of the sales of cannabis happening untaxed and unregulated. That is a huge pent-up demand. So when we tell regulators that if you lower the tax, that there might actually be an increase in total tax revenue, it's a real difficult conversation because it's not understood, because most industries, they have a supply and demand curve. It's all pretty much legal. It's all above board. Everyone can look at the analytics. In cannabis, with 70% of the sales happening, without oversight and without a little bit of knowledge, we're kind of left in this gray area to tell legislators, no, trust me, we really can lower taxes and increase overall revenue. So our goal in this kind of group, and I'll get to you in just a second, Jocelyn, our goal in this group is to share with each other. And it's not just share information, it's share success. We need to take away individual egos. We need to take away the egos of our acronyms that are right next to our names here on this panel. And we need to take those away and have an ego just for the industry. The industry is our ego, and let's fight for it together, because if we don't, who's going to? Everyone wants our tax dollars. Everyone does. They're fighting over all of our tax dollars. When close to 50% of the price to the end consumer is taxes, we have a problem in trying to inform regulators that you can't take that much and still let this industry grow. Jocelyn, you had a question.
Wait. That's beautiful, Jared. We have, this hour flew by. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to keep this conversation going first Thursday next month. So everybody just give your quick little 15-second wrap up, because we literally are out of time.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to shout out. We have 4 out of the 5 cities as members of our organization. And if there is a way to allow your local government folks to be members, it gives them a closer ear to what we're doing. They come to our events. And then I do want to continue this conversation maybe offline or somehow about economic impact studies, because I have a quote out that I can't afford and I need help.
Nice. Tara? Closing statements?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity again, Susan, Jared. Closing statements would be that California has historically led the nation and the world in policy and social justice, and the best weed ever grown, period, and stop. And if we don't work together, we'll lose that position. And that should be our driving factor, because at the end of the day, we are California and the entire world is watching what we do.
Nice. Thank you, Tara. Adam, some closing statements?
Yes, I wanted, Jared, thank you so much for all the work that you do. Appreciate it. Special thanks to Susan. She's awesome. She's a true, advocate for such a long time, and all the panelists and all the great work that they do. Glad to be here and, support and, check us out with, the lbca.com. We're always working on a lot of cool projects, and anytime we can be of any help, we have open, door and open communication policies, and we are here. So thanks again for everybody.
Thanks. Melahat, last little one before you disappear.
I almost left. No, thank you so much for letting me participate. Lots happening in Orange County. Keep watching us on online to see what other cities we open up and lounges and so on and so forth. And this is the brain trust of cannabis in California, so I appreciate being part of it. See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Nate Bradley, some last statements.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks again for the invite. Susan, thank you for having this wonderful event. It's nice to see how everyone's been able to sort of stop and change with everything going on. I can personally say the longer we do these things online, great, because I didn't have to fly, didn't have to grab a room. So I'm really loving doing it from home. But everyone needs to remember moving forward that we have to do it with one voice, and that's key in this. Is the cannabis world is a world of people who are non-conformists by nature, and it's not normal for us to want to work to come in one room and speak with one voice. But for us to get anything done, it has to be done with one movement and one voice. And I think groups like this all coming together at the same time is an important step in making that happen.
Thanks, Nate. Johnny, some last words.
Yeah, I mean, one voice, man, so critical. I mean, that's what I hear from the supervisors in San Francisco. You're all asking for different things. So now we're united in San Francisco. We're asking for one thing, but we need to unite at the state level. And I thank Jared and all of the leaders of the industry for kind of getting that going, and then get involved. Everybody from, people that trim cannabis all the way up to the CEOs of the company, dedicate resources and time to the movement, because that's the only way we get it done if we all do it together.
Nice. Dalian, last chance.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here and for the invitation. I think this is a really exciting time with this crappy situation, of course, but it does provide us with some opportunities. So one voice is huge, and I'll say the same thing that everybody else has said about that. That's what everybody's looking for when it comes to elected officials throughout the state and local government. So thank you guys all so much. We look forward to working with you all in the future.
Thank you. Well, I guess one last word is UCBA is a statewide organization. We take on all license types. I realize that we've been a retail trade organization as our primary focus, but in trying to get good policy, I think it's all trying to help all license types and make this whole industry a little bit more sustainable. So I know that we're going to continue this. I can't say that there's not a single person on this panel that I haven't talked to and asked for help on kind of statewide issues. issues. So I think what we need to do is just continue to pass down what we're working on, pass up what we're working on, and meet in the middle and see how we can help each other. And Susan, thank you for giving us the platform to do this. UCBA.com, come on, let's have the conversations. We've invited all retailers onto a Telegram. Come on, let's talk about it and see what's next. So Susan, I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but I appreciate you allowing us to, and I appreciate the whole panel. Thanks for taking your time.
That's cool. Thank you, Jared. All the links are in the chat, and you guys, the attendees, you can save your chat so that you can capture all of that great information. Thank you, panelists, so much. We just barely scratched the surface, so we're gonna have to keep this one going.